Hello, everyone, and welcome to English Pod, the channel where we make learning English fun. In this series, we break down key words, slang, idioms, and cultural references from each episode of Sex and the City to help you naturally improve your English. Watch our videos either before or after you enjoy the episode to boost your understanding and language skills. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Let's dive in.
And today, it's a bit different, kind of a linguistic detour. We're diving into Sex and the City, Season 1, Episode 2, Models and Mortals.
Classic.
Right. We're looking at the advanced vocabulary, the phrases, the idioms used in that specific episode. We've got the list you sent, meanings, examples, even scene details.
Which is great context.
Totally. And the goal here isn't just, dictionary definitions. We want to explore how these words, these phrases, actually reveal character.
And societal observations, too, right? The show was quite sharp on that.
Absolutely. How the language itself gives us insight into Carrie's world, the themes of the episode. It's kind of like boosting our linguistic awareness through pop culture.
Yeah, it's fascinating how even seemingly light entertainment uses language so precisely. It adds layers.
Okay, so let's jump in. Vocabulary first. The title itself, Models and Mortals. That word mortals. Carrie uses it right at the start in the voiceover.
When she's talking about how some men see models.
Right.
Like goddesses, almost.
Exactly. She says something like, they think models live differently from ordinary mortals.
Yeah.
It immediately sets up this hierarchy.
It really does. This idea of elevating people, often just based on looks, to this almost divine status. It says a lot about what society values, or is told to value.
Yeah, it makes you think, why do we do that? Put people on pedestals?
Well, perhaps it's related to things like the halo effect. You
Yeah.
know, assuming someone beautiful must have other great qualities. Or maybe it reflects sort of deeper power dynamics.
That's interesting. Who gets put up there and what it says about the rest of us, the mortals.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's enlightened, oh, this one's pure Carrie sarcasm.
About Barkley, the photographer.
Yes.
Yeah.
With his creepy model videos,
Mm-hmm.
she calls him someone who sees himself as an enlightened man. The gap between the word and the reality is just huge.
It really is, and sarcasm is such a good tool there. She signals her disapproval without being, overly aggressive. And it critiques that whole dynamic, his self-perception versus his actual kind of exploitative actions. Objectification in the fashion world.
Yeah, and calling out that sort of false intellectual cover for bad behavior.
Yeah.
We still see that, don't we?
Definitely. It feels very relevant.
Okay, moving to Miranda, always the pragmatist. She uses obsession about Skipper.
Right. His focus on models during their brunch. Unhealthy, she calls it.
Yeah, and that really taps into that theme of unrealistic expectations in relationships, doesn't it?
Precisely. Skipper isn't focused on a real person. He's fixated on an idea, an image. Miranda sees right through it.
It's about projection, maybe. Projecting fantasies onto people.
I think so. Especially when those people are presented as somehow special or other, it stops you seeing them as, well, just people.
Which leads perfectly into Carrie questioning the mythology around models.
Ah, yes. The mythology around models makes them seem perfect.
Right. It's about those narratives we build, often totally separate from reality.
Exactly. These constructed stories, fueled by media, by culture, they simplify people, strip away the messy human bits, replace them with an ideal.
So Carrie's questioning is like, hey, let's look behind the curtain.
Mm-hmm. Challenging us to think critically. Are we seeing the person or just the curated image, the myth?
Okay, this one's interesting. Carrie notes Derek the modelizer is drawn to a model's vulnerability.
But then mistakes it for depth, right?
Exactly. That's the twist. It's quite a layered observation.
It really is. It digs into attraction, how easily we misread things. Maybe he wants someone vulnerable to feel superior or in control.
Could be. But Carrie sees the flaw. Vulnerability doesn't automatically mean depth. It makes you question the basis of that connection.
Definitely. How authentic can it be if it's built on misinterpretation?
Then Charlotte shares something more personal, about a friend hiding insecurity behind a confident facade.
Behind her confident facade, she was deeply insecure. Yeah, that hits home.
It's that universal thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
The difference between the public face and the private reality.
Absolutely. We all curate ourselves to some extent, and it highlights the pressure, especially maybe for women, to seem perfect, even when you're crumbling inside.
Very true. Okay, back to Barkley and his videos. Carrie feels he views the women as specimens.
Oh, yeah. That word is so
Right.
Clinical, dehumanizing.
Right. It reduces them to objects for study. Her discomfort is so palpable.
As it should be. It highlights the core problem with objectification, treating someone like an it, not a you, stripping away their agency, their individuality.
And she takes it further, saying Barkley has a fetish for models, not just a preference.
That's a strong word. Fetish implies something beyond admiration, right? More like an excessive, maybe irrational focus.
Yeah, it flags it as unhealthy, distinguishes between appreciating beauty and this kind of obsessive fixation.
It draws a clear line.
What about Derek's explanation for his behavior? He talks about detachment.
The defense mechanism excuse to avoid getting hurt.
Yeah, sounds reasonable on one level, but what's the issue there?
Well, while self-protection is normal, constant detachment kind of kills real connection, doesn't it? It suggests a fear of vulnerability, of true intimacy.
Building walls.
Exactly. It might protect him from some pain, but it probably stops him having really meaningful relationships, too. It's a common pattern, but costly.
Then there's Skipper. He actually admits his insecurity around Miranda's confidence.
Yeah, that's a surprisingly vulnerable moment for him. Very relatable, that feeling of being maybe outmatched.
Totally. Despite his earlier model focus, this bit humanizes him. It shows those power dynamics in dating.
Right. How perceived differences in confidence or status can really mess with your self-esteem. Even confident people have insecurities in certain areas.
True. Then Carrie observes the men at the party, their shallow admiration for the models.
Just looking, right, not really seeing.
Exactly. She contrasts that surface-level gaze with something deeper, more meaningful appreciation.
Yeah, that kind of admiration is all about the exterior. No real connection or understanding. It highlights the superficiality you sometimes find in those social scenes.
Especially where looks are heavily prioritized. And at that same party, the women engage in speculation, gossiping about who's dating who.
Classic social behavior, isn't it? Filling in the blanks when you don't have the facts.
Yeah, but the episode kind of gently critiques it, right?
Yeah.
How quickly we create narratives based on appearances.
Definitely. Which can be unfair, inaccurate, even damaging sometimes.
Carrie writes in her column about men chasing perfection in models, linking it to fantasy.
Those two words work together perfectly there.
They really do. Chasing perfection is chasing a fantasy, an unreal ideal.
And it highlights the damage those media-driven ideals can do to men's expectations and to women's self-image, setting everyone up for failure.
Yeah, an impossible standard. And she elaborates men fall in love with a fantasy of models, not the actual person.
That's such a crucial distinction.
It is, because if you're falling for an illusion, you can't have a real connection. You're not seeing the individual flaws and all.
You're seeing your own projection. And eventually, reality hits and the fantasy shatters.
Which sets up disappointment.
Inevitably.
And finally, vocabulary-wise, Miranda challenges the group's whole perception of beauty.
Right, during the brunch, saying it's shaped by media, by the male gaze, pushing back.
Yeah, she's saying, hold on, this isn't objective truth.
Exactly. Perception is constructed. Miranda's pointing that out, urging a more critical look at beauty standards, encouraging women to define beauty for themselves.
It's pretty powerful. Okay, let's switch to the phrases and idioms. These add another layer of meaning.
Yeah, they're often more evocative, aren't they?
Totally. First up, put someone on a pedestal. Carrie uses this about men idealizing models, like Derek.
It connects right back to that mythology idea.
It does. It's such a clear image, lifting someone up so high they're untouchable, unreal, ignores their flaws, sets impossible expectations.
Perfect idiom for that.
Then at the party, Carrie notes models are always in the limelight.
Captures that constant public attention, the scrutiny.
Yeah, paints a picture of that lack of privacy, hints at the pressure that comes with the glamour.
There's often a downside to being in the limelight.
For sure. Okay, Carrie says Barkley clearly has a thing for models.
Which sounds casual, have a thing for, like a preference.
Right, but given his behavior.
It takes on a darker meaning. It highlights the obsessive, unhealthy nature of his thing. Shows how context changes meaning.
Definitely. Now, a sweeter one. Skipper tells Miranda he was totally swept off his feet when they met.
Ah, that's lovely. It implies that sudden, intense, romantic feeling.
And it really contrasts with the other interactions, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Seems like genuine emotion.
It does.
Yeah.
It highlights the difference between connection and objectification.
Miranda's joke. Most models don't live up to the hype.
Classic Miranda. Puncturing the balloon of expectations.
Yeah. Live up to the hype, meet those high expectations set by publicity. Her comment just points out the gap between image and reality again.
A lighthearted jab at the mythology.
Then Carrie says Derek keeps falling for the fantasy.
Not just falling for someone, but specifically falling for the fantasy.
Right. That qualifiers everything. His feelings aren't for the real person, but for his own idealized version.
Reinforces that critique of superficial connections again, based on illusion.
Charlotte's stressed about dating pressures, and Carrie says, it comes with the territory.
A bit cynical, maybe, but realistic.
Probably.
Yeah.
It means accepting the unpleasant parts of a situation. Like, yeah, dating can involve these pressures, especially for women in that world. It's expected, even if it sucks.
It's an acknowledgement of the unspoken rules, perhaps.
Carrie reflects that behind closed doors, even models cry.
Oh, that's poignant. Humanizing them.
Totally. Behind closed doors, what happens in private, away from the public eye. It reminds us everyone has struggles, vulnerabilities, no matter the image, breaks down the pedestal.
Brings them back down to earth. Shared humanity.
Miranda vents about men expecting her to measure up to model standards.
Despite all her other qualities, her intelligence, her career.
Exactly. Measure up. Be as good as this external standard. It highlights that intense pressure on women to fit narrow beauty ideals, often ignoring everything else.
It's so frustrating and damaging.
And finally, the idea that Skipper seems in over his head with Miranda.
A bit overwhelmed by her confidence, maybe.
Seems like it. In over one's head, dealing with something too difficult. It touches on those complex relationship dynamics, feeling inadequate or unbalanced.
Yeah, how differences in confidence or personality can create tricky situations.
So wrapping this up, it's really clear these words and phrases in Models and Mortals weren't just random.
No, very deliberate choices.
Yeah, they consistently highlight the core themes.
The cultural references and some pretty advanced English grammar you noticed.
Yeah, it's amazing how much is packed into just one episode from, the late 90s.
Totally. So the mission today basically is to get a quick grip on all that, the 90s cultural stuff, the language tricks, so everyone listening can, feel clued in without needing to do all the digging themselves.
Exactly. Consider it a shortcut through 90s high fashion and some nifty grammar points.
We've got a list. Fashion mags, supermodels, even a magician reference.
Oh.
And then the grammar side, some really sophisticated stuff in the dialogue and Carrie's narration.
It's a great lens to see how language works in pop culture.
Think of this as your fast track. Let's jump into the culture first. Top of the list, Vogue. It's right there at the start, and it's clearly more than just, a magazine here.
Absolutely. Vogue, back then especially, was, it was the authority, like the absolute pinnacle of the fashion world.
Before everything was online, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, mentioning Vogue immediately sets the scene. High fashion, high stakes. Especially with models being central to this episode's plot. It's shorthand for the elite.
Right. Sets the context. And then Miranda makes that crack about guys always wanting women who look like Elle Macpherson. That name just screams 90s supermodel, doesn't it? For anyone maybe not familiar, who was Elle and why the body?
Elle Macpherson was huge, one of the original supermodels.
Yeah.
And the body, that nickname says it all, really.
Yeah.
She just embodied that specific ideal of the time. Tall, athletic, just seemingly perfect. Miranda's joke, maybe a bit sharp, but it totally nails that cultural obsession.
Makes you think about beauty standards then.
Definitely. It points right at what was being amplified by the media.
Okay, so then there's Fashion Week. The party Carrie and Stanford go to is tied to it. It feels like a big deal in the episode.
Oh, it was. The New York Fashion Week wasn't just models on runways. It was this major cultural convergence,
Everyone who mattered in fashion was there.
Pretty much. Designers, editors, buyers, the social scene.
Yeah.
So that party isn't just any party. Being there signals access, being in the know.
And the location, the meatpacking district, you pointed out that area was changing a lot back then. Why is that detail significant?
Well, the meatpacking district's transformation was kind of symbolic of NYC in the late 90s.
How so?
It went from, actual gritty meatpacking plants to this super trendy upscale area very quickly.
Right.
So setting a fashionable party there, it just anchors the episode perfectly in that specific time and the city's vibe. Urban cool, exclusivity.
Got it. Now, this one feels a bit out of left field. David Copperfield, a magician. How does he connect to dating models?
Yeah, it seems random at first. But think about what Copperfield did.
Made things disappear, levitate.
Exactly. Made impossible things look effortless, captivating. So comparing a guy's pull with women, especially desirable women like models, to Copperfield, it suggests this almost magical charm.
Yeah, like an inexplicable ability to attract people.
Yeah, a certain smoothness, confidence, maybe a bit of mystery. It's actually quite a clever comparison.
It is, actually.
Oh,
Okay, then we jump back decades with the mention of Twiggy. Why bring up a 60s icon in a 90s show about beauty?
well, Twiggy represented a massive shift.
From the earlier look, yeah.
Very different.
Totally. Her super thin, androgynous look in the 60s was revolutionary compared to the curvy ideals before her. Referencing her is like a reminder that these beauty standards aren't fixed. They evolve, they change.
So the 90s ideals weren't the end of the story, basically.
Exactly. It hints that the conversation is ongoing, influenced by past shifts. It makes you think, how do we even perceive beauty standards now? It's always in flux.
That's a good point. And then a brand name, Calvin Klein. You can't talk 90s fashion without mentioning him, right? Pretty much impossible. Calvin Klein, the brand. It just was the 90s aesthetic for so many.
Sleek, minimal.
Yep. And those iconic, often controversial ads featuring the supermodels themselves. Mentioning Calvin Klein instantly evokes that whole high fashion mood.
Which brings us nicely to the supermodels. The episode really spins around their allure, their almost celebrity status. What was different about them compared to earlier models? What really strikes you about that level of fame?
What's really striking is how they became more than just models. They weren't just anonymous clothes hangers.
Right.
They were household names. Cindy Crawford, Naomi Campbell, Claudia Schiffer. You knew who they were.
They were everywhere. Magazine covers, music videos.
Talk shows, gossip columns. Their personal lives were news. It was this unique moment where models really achieved, like, A-list celebrity status. Huge cultural influence.
And contrasting with all that glamour, we get Bartley, the documentary filmmaker character. He seems to represent a different side of 90s NYC art.
Yeah, Barkley definitely taps into that downtown indie art scene vibe.
A bit more edgy.
Definitely. Pushing boundaries, blurring lines between art and life, sometimes controversially. His whole project, filming women he dates and calling it art. It's a commentary, isn't it, on objectification, relationships, maybe the ethics of art itself. A real contrast to the commercial fashion world.
Adds a bit of grit, maybe, a different perspective.
For sure. And lastly, just the city, New York. It feels like more than just buildings.
Oh, absolutely. In the whole show, NYC is practically a main character.
It really is. Its energy, its pressure, its opportunities, it shapes everything the characters do and feel. Especially here, in this episode, the glamour, the competition of the fashion world.
Yeah.
It's all driven by the city itself.
It's the stage, definitely. Okay, that paints a really vivid picture of the cultural side. Let's switch over to the language now. You picked out some advanced grammar points that add a lot to the show's style. First one, inversion for emphasis. How does that work?
Right, inversion. It sounds technical, but it's basically about flipping the usual sentence order to highlight something, especially with phrases like only after. The example was, only after they've dated a model do they realize how insecure they feel. Normally you'd say, they realize how insecure they feel only after they've dated a model. Putting only after first really hammers home that the realization only happens after that specific thing.
So it really emphasizes the timing, the condition.
Exactly. It draws your attention right to it. Makes you think about why that timing is key.
Interesting. Okay, next. The subjunctive mood. Sounds a bit formal, maybe. How does it pop up here?
Yeah, the subjunctive can feel a little old school sometimes, but it's crucial for hypotheticals, things contrary to fact.
Like the example.
Like, if I were a model, maybe I'd understand. Using were instead of was, that's the subjunctive.
Right, if I were.
It signals loud and clear. I'm not a model, this is just imagination. It adds a layer of maybe distance or pure speculation that if I was doesn't quite capture.
Okay, it marks it as definitely hypothetical. Then, reduced relative clauses. Sounds complex, but maybe it's common.
Oh, it's super common. We use them all the time to make sentences tighter, more concise.
How does it work?
You take a clause like the man who was dating the model. You chop out the who was, just leaving the man dating the model.
Ah, okay. The man dating the model turned out to be a complete jerk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The ing verb acts like an adjective, basically. It just flows better, sounds more natural than always using who is or which was. Little things that shape the rhythm.
Makes sense. Economy of language. All right, cleft sentences for emphasis. Another emphasis trick.
Yep, another way to put a spotlight on one part of the sentence. Cleft sentences often start with it is or it was.
Like the example, it's the rejection that really gets to me.
Perfect. Instead of just saying the rejection really gets to me, that structure isolates the rejection and makes it the absolute focus. It's saying this is the thing that matters most.
Like pointing a finger linguistically. Okay. Mixed conditionals, mixing time frames. How does that work?
Yeah, it's about connecting a hypothetical past event to a present reality or feeling.
The example was good. If I hadn't gone to that party, I wouldn't be so confused right now.
Exactly. Hadn't gone is past hypothetical. Wouldn't be right now.
Yeah.
Is the present consequence of that hypothetical past.
So you're linking a past what if to a current how things are?
Precisely. It lets characters, or the narration, explore those cause and effect chains across time. Really useful for showing ongoing consequences.
Yeah, I can see that. Okay, impersonal passive constructions. When do people use these?
These are often used to sound a bit more formal or detached, or when you want to state a general belief without saying who believes it.
Like it is said.
Exactly. It's said that models have it easier in New York. Who says it? Doesn't matter. It's presented as a common idea, a rumor, a general perception.
Gives it a bit of weight without needing a source.
Right. It avoids making a direct claim yourself.
Okay. Then nominalization. That's turning verbs into nouns, right? What effect does that have?
Yeah, basically. So instead of saying someone obsesses over perfection, you talk about their obsession.
His obsession with perfection was disturbing.
Right. It makes the concept, the obsession, the subject. It often sounds more abstract, maybe more formal or analytical. Less about the action, more about the state or concept itself.
Interesting. Feels a bit more detached, maybe?
Can do, yeah. It's common in more formal writing or narration for that reason.
Okay. Present perfect continuous, like, I have been wondering, what does the continuous part add?
It really emphasizes the duration and the ongoing nature of the action. I've been wondering, isn't just, I wonder sometimes?
It means it started in the past and is still happening.
Exactly. It stretches the action out, suggests it's been on Carrie's mind for a while and probably still is. It conveys that sense of prolonged thought or activity.
Adds that still unfolding feeling. Got it. How about modal verbs for speculation about the past, like using might have or could have?
Yeah, modals like might, could, must, may are all about possibility, probability, certainty. When you add have plus the past participle like might have been, you're using them to speculate about something that happened before now. She might have been offended.
You're not sure, but it's possible.
Exactly. The choice of modal might, could, must shows how certain or uncertain the speaker is about that past event. It's nuanced.
Allows for different shades of doubt or certainty about the past. And finally, ellipsis in dialogue, leaving words out.
Oh yeah, we do this constantly in real speech. It's just cutting out words when the meaning is totally clear from context.
Like the example, gorgeous, tall, definitely a model.
Perfect. We know it means she is gorgeous, she is tall, she is definitely a model. But saying all that sounds stiff, unnatural.
Right.
Ellipsis makes dialogue sound quick, natural, efficient. It's amazing how much we understand without all the grammatical bits filled in, isn't it?
It really is. So, wrapping this up, what does this all kind of mean? We've got a much clearer picture now of the 90s NYC backdrop in that episode.
The whole cultural vibe.
And also how these sometimes subtle grammar points really shape the show's voice, how it tells its story.
Yeah, we've seen how things like fashion trends, social scenes, even, David Copperfield, they all weave together to create that specific world.
Right.
And on the language side, things like inversion or the subjunctive, or even just leaving words out. They're not just rules, they're tools the writers use for emphasis, for nuance, for style.
Hopefully this whole deep dive gave people some, I don't know, aha moments, connecting pop culture, language, storytelling.
Yeah, see how it all fits together.
In this episode, Carrie Bradshaw explores the obsession that New York men have with models, raising the question, can real women compete with the fantasy of perfection? Carrie's friend Stanford introduces her to Barkley, a photographer who only dates models and secretly videotapes them. Meanwhile, Miranda begins dating Skipper, a sweet, awkward guy who's still hung up on his ex. She struggles to take him seriously, unsure how to handle his genuine affection. Samantha gets involved with a successful movie producer who is, unsurprisingly, only attracted to models, showing how even confident, sexually liberated women can feel insecure in a world that idealizes physical perfection. Through it all, Carrie reflects on her own insecurities and wonders why men are so enchanted by models. She interviews some of these men and examines how media and social standards have shaped modern dating expectations.
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy learning new words, phrases, grammar, and cultural references from Sex and the City. I will be back with the next lesson soon. Until then, bye.